2, 1, and I just need to unmute you. And I think I'm live and can be heard. I think we're here, Rupert. I think we're here.
Woo-hoo.
So we
good
say,
evening, everybody.
Good evening to you. Early person to show up is Mark Summerton. Hi there, Mark.
Hello, Mark. Well, you're there nice and early.
Thanks for popping in. And I thought you were watching the football. Anyway, thanks for posting, Mark. And as we settle in, if you could you just let us know that you're there? Just post a comment whether you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or even on Periscope. Just drop us a note, just make a comment and let us know that you're in the room. Yeah, that'd be great. I can see at the moment... No, I can't see anything. So there's not very many people with us yet, Rupert. So we haven't really talked about what we're going to talk about tonight. Yeah.
No. No, I don't know what we've got. So many things to talk about. Not least of all the fact that it's the last one of the year.
Yeah, that is true.
That it's nearly Christmas. Are you ready for Christmas?
So not ready. No, indeed. Hello, Raymond. Raymond Nelson. I don't know your name. Welcome. It's
evening, Raymond.
I think it's a first time for Raymond for joining in the open house. So welcome to you.
Welcome.
It
is the first time, Raymond. We ought to tell him that it's always a slow start because we wait for people to come on and join us.
Yeah, brilliant. Hugh Newman. Hugh, hello there. Hugh from Megalithomania. Excellent job. Nice to see you.
Hugh, nice to have you on.
So in this first 5 minutes or so, as folks gather, we just need to gather our own thoughts a little bit. Do you know one thing that struck me, Rupert, is that we pop up here on Facebook or what have you. People know us for the films and the films we're producing now and the podcast and everything. Sometimes it occurs to me. I just wonder how we occur to the folk out there. In terms of, how much, because we'd never advertised much of our background, really. We're just two guys that pop up and spout about this, that, and the other, and disappear again, and talk about Standing with Stones and the stuff we've done, we've done in that regard. But folk don't know much about, how we started out, or what our real lives are about.
Yeah. Yes, it depends what you want to call your day job, doesn't it, really?
Yeah.
And whether anybody is remotely interested. Well, yeah. I think certainly increasingly, this is this kind of is, well, it's more of our day job than it ever was. And it was just something we were always passionate about, really, rather than something that we earned money at.
Yeah.
But that's an important distinction to make, though. The difference between amateur and professional is purely and simply that if you're professional, you earn money at it.
Okay.
If you're amateur, you tend not to. We have a good level of knowledge and we like to share it. That's my view.
We have a reasonable level of knowledge. It's funny. We've actually haven't really got much of an idea where we are on the scale of knowledge. Sometimes I think, gosh, we're so clever. We know so much. On the other hand, I think most of our viewers probably.
Well, do you know what? I'm a firm believer in the fact that. Well, I struggle to be absolutely brilliant at being me, and and on that basis. On that basis, what do you call your professional of anything for? Yes.
Anyway, who knows? Anyway, the fact of the matter is, Rupert's background is in graphic design. That was your bread and butter for.
That was my bread and butter.
Most of your working life, and my bread and butter, if you can call it that, for most of my working life, has been as an actor.
Yes. But if you remove the financial remuneration from it, then I've been a naturalist and nature photographer all my life.
Yeah.
So
But
that's
we'll tell the stories some other time, not now,
yes.
perhaps.
You started it.
I know I did. Yes.
Cheers.
Anyway,
cheers.
cheers and welcome to you. So, what's come up in the last month? First of all, I guess thank you guys for being patient and hanging around. I don't know if anybody noticed there wasn't an open house last Wednesday when there should have been. Nevertheless, here we are. I think it rather speaks to us both being a little bit busy. But what's come up in the last month?
Are we talking megalith ones?
We're talking megalith. We're not talking about us. We're talking about stones. You fool.
Well, do you know it's an interesting thing that when we're putting the podcasts together, that I get news bulletins. I probably get about, I don't know, a dozen a day, sometimes more, but averaging, around 15 a day probably, of archaeology bulletins of stuff from around the world. And there's only so much that we can fit in a podcast. So there's all this stuff that comes in and you go, oh, wow, now that's fascinating. And we don't do anything with it because there isn't time. And we're nudging progressively closer towards probably doing a special where we just do a roundup of all the things that we haven't had time to talk about. I should probably back that up. Do you know what? There's one one of the things that we couldn't fit in the December podcast.
Yeah.
Almost wanted to make it the whimsy section because it's so silly. But this chap had... he'd bought himself a little pot at a car boot sale, and it was just a nice little ceramic pot that he it had these little drawings of animals in the bathroom as a toothbrush holder, and it was some years afterwards that he was doing some work for Sotheby's. I think it was Sotheby's, one of the big auction houses anyway. And somebody brought in this pot, and he said, well, I got one of those. And it turned out to be this 4,000-year-old ceramic pot from, I don't actually off the top of my head remember where. But there you are, this guy had picked it up for nothing. Literally like
ridiculous.
5 pence at a car boot sale. And he'd been sitting on a 4,000-year-old ceramic pot in pretty damn good condition too, So yeah,
so that's one thing we couldn't fit in that we'll
fit it in.
pass by. I just wanted to mention Raymond, who's here for the first time. He says he found out about Standing with Stones because Newman mentioned it. Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you.
In one of his videos. So I decided to check it out. Bless you. Thomas Ambrose is here. Hi, Thomas.
Hello, Thomas.
He's one of our biggest fans over in New York State, over the other side of the Atlantic. And John Emmerich says, hello from New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
Yay. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
That's do you know what? Just what time of day is it for you guys? Type it in the comments.
Wow. They must get out more. It's midday, sort of, what is it, midday? It's lunchtime.
Wow. That's nice. Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah. Anything else that seemed to get missed out? Actually, we enjoyed doing the last podcast very much, and we've been much encouraged by the feedback that we've had.
But the fact that nobody said it was too long.
And nobody said it was too long. Yeah.
That's true.
It's just gone 3. For John and Thomas, yeah.
Just gone 3. Wow, okay.
Oh, right, yeah, only 5 hours behind. Okay.
I hope it's a sunny day for you guys.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
No, though.
It's funny how we're all over the place because it's 10 past 8 for Michael. It's 10 past 9 for me. Yeah. Hey ho. Sorry. Podcast. Go on. You were saying.
Yeah. No. Nobody's said it was too long, it's sort of almost it's ghastly. It's almost hello Mo, glad to see you.
Hello, Mo.
It's almost worrying in a way, because if we're given that latitude, if we're given that freedom to extend the podcasts, Lord knows where it'll end.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
Because guys, we could talk for a long time. And I think the archaeoastronomy one was about right, and we chose that, or I don't know, I chose it or whatever. Whoever's to blame for covering the topic of archaeoastronomy.
You're entirely to blame.
I'm entirely to blame. It actually turned out all right. We enjoyed doing it, and of course we always do a little bit of homework in order that we're not totally talking out of our bottoms when it comes to stuff.
Yeah, we do. We know I'll say one of the things. Serious hat on for a moment, really is one. I am really well. We both are, but I'm just probably more anal about it than Michael. That there is so much nonsense and drivel spread about a lot of the time that we're very, very particular about making sure that we've got our facts right, and only really telling you stuff that we know, unless it's stuff that if we don't know, we tell you we don't know, and it's just conjecture and ideas and what have you. But it's so important because there is.
And if we do put forward a wild idea, then it's still hung on facts.
Yes, it's never based on absolute nonsense. No, it really isn't. Not ever.
Steve Giel asks, Standing with Stones was very good. Thank you. Trust me, I'm a druid.
Thank you, Steve.
Is the book still available without getting a second mortgage?
Actually, if I know that there are no stocks in England or in Britain at the moment, but if you go to Thames and Hudson's New York office, or do you know what? If you just go to Amazon.com, you can certainly it's still in stock in America. I think it's still in stock in Australia, actually. It's just not very impressive that the one place that hasn't got it is Britain.
Yeah.
They are faffing around and organising themselves for a reprint at the moment. Don't know when they're going to do it because obviously it costs a lot of money to print and they're faffing. But you can get it from America. Just go to Amazon.com and you'll get it cheaper than I can buy it, to be honest. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can buy it cheaper on Amazon than the author can buy it from his own publisher.
Okay, Steve, I hope that's hopeful. Thank you for the question. And bring on the questions, guys.
Yes, do.
That's what will keep. That's the sand in our oyster. Is that right?
The sand in our oyster. It's the grit that makes the pearl.
Grit that makes the pearl. Yes. Sand in our
Indeed.
oyster. Watching too many cookie programs or something.
Yes.
The sand that makes the pearl. Yes.
Do you know what? Having an actual question come in reminds me that we had a question in from, I can't remember his name.
Thank you, Mo.
It'll come to me for the next podcast that's about the Beaker People. And I said,
oh, is it?
Yes, and I need to do quite a lot of homework on
that. Don't we all?
I actually don't know a huge amount about the Beaker People at all.
Yeah.
So that's going to be some interesting reading for me in my Christmas spare time.
Do you know, that's one of the really fundamentally surprising things that's come out for me, since we got back on board and started doing stuff in the podcast and everything. Just I didn't realise what a massive shift there was between the end of the Neolithic and the beginning of the Bronze Age. the Neolithic Bronze Age boundary and
Yeah.
what actually occurred there.
Mm.
What stuff came to an end? What new stuff started happening?
It's staggering, isn't it?
Yeah.
The fact that you can, because there's bordering on no evidence for anything actual, apart from the fact that suddenly these new people came in and everything changed. So you're left with all these questions of, was it invasion? Was it plague? Was it plague that wiped out the incumbents, or was it war, or was it these people that tipped up with such phenomenal new social and cultural tech that everybody just said, "Oh, have some of that." We just have no idea. All we know is that almost, geologically or kind of historically, it's just everything changed almost overnight. It's amazing.
500 years
really?
or so,
Yeah.
And that sort of brings up the other thing that we don't realise, that the Stone Age, the Neolithic in Britain, extended way beyond when Europe had entered the Bronze Age themselves. People in Europe had entered the Bronze Age themselves.
Generally speaking, we were 500
years
behind everything that was happening on. You can't just say Europe, because it extended into the Middle East. But any of the tech that arose, certainly any of the Metal Ages, and the European continent was, generally speaking, 500 years ahead of us, which is astonishing when you think that for some of that time we were still connected. It was still only walking. It's not like we were divided by a massive body of water. So you have to ask why. It's another curious, really.
Yeah, well, we will do our homework and do our best. Yeah, because that's the other thing, isn't it? That dear Ötzi, the Iceman, he had a copper axe. Was it a copper axe? He did, yes.
It was a copper axe from Austria.
So he was a Bronze Age chap at the time that we were still in the Stone Age. Yeah.
Do you know what? It's a thing worth sharing, because I'm not sure if we actually have discussed this publicly, as it were. And it was Che Rudge, one of our friends in the community, who now Che is his knowledge of crafts and metalworking, what have you, is phenomenal. And he made the point to us that why are there no copper items? Why are there no copper artifacts? Generally speaking, you don't have copper artifacts. And you think, well, that's a good point. He said, well, yeah, that's because when they figured out that you mix tin with copper and you get bronze, and it's a hell of a lot harder and better to use as a tool. Well, that's because they melted all the copper stuff down with tin so they could make new tools. That's why there's none of it left to find. And you think, yeah, of course. It just makes total sense when you see it from a purely practical point of view. Nothing mystical about that at all, just common sense. I've got a tool, but I can make it better.
Which raises a very interesting point, actually. This is something for the podcast, really, probably. Once we've done our proper homework, you wonder, were people coming over in a sort of resources grab to Cornwall for the tin?
Well, I think
fed
we
up
have to say they were, because we certainly know that
were they fed up with the rate of exchange and decided to go again?
That's almost not funny at the moment.
No, exactly. Yeah.
But we certainly know that that the real reason that the Romans finally got rid of the Druids in Wales was because the mineral resources were what the Romans were after. So, I mean, what were the main things in Wales? But it doesn't matter. The fact is that our tin mines in Cornwall, um, and in fact, I'm sure some people listening will probably know. I can't think off the top of my head, but up in North Wales, and going across to Anglesey, was it copper on Anglesey? I don't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, that's what the Romans were after. So I
yeah. Raymond says higher population, higher technology, maybe. Maybe.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. Hello, Nunvan. Hello, Nunvan says, even guys, and he also says hello to other Stoneheads.
Good man, yes.
Good to have you with us again. Yeah. Calibra, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, says, hi there, loves standing stones. I noticed in the first episode you visited the Merivale Bronze Age site. Do you guys visit it often, and what are your thoughts on the people who lived there? Wow. Yes.
That's a nice question. Do we visit it often? No.
Nope.
Michael's been there a lot more recently than I have. The last time I was there was probably about 7 years ago, I guess. Well, you were last there this year, weren't you?
I was in the summer, yes. In fact, I made one of our little films about it. With the drone and things. Calibra, you have to understand is that Rupert lives in France, actually, yes. And it is a great place to visit. And we will be back there. Yes. No question about it. But that's a very interesting question about the people who live there.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things, I mean, obviously we can't say that much about the people per se, but what you can say is that Merivale, more than, do you know what, probably more than any other site in the whole of Britain, he said, desperately trying to travel Britain in a few nanoseconds to make sure he's not talking nonsense. The thing about Merivale is that site, that settlement, has everything there. It's got a stone circle, which is clearly ritual, and let me be distinct. In when I use the word ritual, I mean in the literal sense that you're talking about things. It's a repeated process. So even having an evening meal, it's a ritual. It's something that we do regularly. It's not. So I'm not saying it's religious necessarily or anything else. It's ritual. Now there's a stone circle there, which is ritual. There's standing stones there, which, take your pick. We don't know what they were for, but whether they were meeting places or marketplaces, what have you. You've got standing stones there. You've got some of the most significant.
Just in case we get lost, I'm going to run the stonescape, but keep talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got two of the, in my opinion anyway, two of the most significant stone rows on Dartmoor. You've got hut circles all over the place. In the middle of the stone rows, you've got a burial kist. So you have this massive site that clearly has all the ingredients of any given culture. It's a town, if you like. It's a town that covered every aspect of life and living, and that's something that we don't really see. I mean, obviously we know that it happened all over the place, but Merivale is one of the very, very few places that holds all those ingredients still intact. If intact isn't probably taking a little bit far. So what do we know about the people? Well, we certainly know that they were sophisticated. Do you know what's funny? In the last podcast, we were talking about archaeoastronomy. There has been a lot of conjecture about whether the Merivale stone rows aligned with anything at all astronomically. and our view generally is no. They may have done, but take your pick. It's a line. It's going to align with something. Just take your pick. But what the site was used for, or how it was used. The fact that you have these stone rows with a funereal kist in the middle. Now, was it a processionary pathway?
That's exactly what we're looking at right now, the aerial shot of the kist.
Oh, really? Yeah. Excellent. It's a lovely shot you did there as well. But the thing that I find intriguing about stone rows like those at Merivale is that it's like a very, very narrow corridor. Yeah. So you have these two rows of stones that you can walk down, and so you have to wonder, well, did they have stone walls? Was it just like that, or was it enclosed in another way? Because you have to think, well, that was designed to be walked through. Don't you think? I think. Don't know, but that's what I think. With a kist in the middle, so. And then I start thinking with questions like, we've said this before as well, that, just because something's got a burial in it doesn't make it a burial site. So you go to somewhere like Westminster Abbey and you walk up the aisle of Westminster Abbey, and there's monarchs and there's all sorts of people who are buried in that aisle. You walk across them, and it's funny, this religious thing of don't walk over the graves. Well, why? They deliberately put them where you were going to walk in some of these places. So you have to wonder with things like the burial kist in Merivale, was it a real a burial site and a religious site that, because maybe it was the builder, maybe it was the guy who designed the whole place was buried in the middle of the thing that he designed. It was actually nothing religious or spiritual at all. Don't know.
It just goes to show that in order to get at something close, you've got to take yourself away. You've got to blast your mind wide open and consider all things before you can begin to shape sort of look at all parts of the kaleidoscope. Nun Van says it was a Neolithic theme park. It certainly is a Neolithic theme park. Yeah. Well, actually, Nun Van asks a really important question about Dartmoor. Was it like that back then, though, Hart? And the answer most definitely is no.
No, not at all. It's a lovely question, though, because there is no straightforward answer. The reality is that 10,000 years ago, Dartmoor was heavy forest, dense forest, and it was gradually cleared over thousands of years. It was deforested, ultimately for farming. But on the way down to the beginning of farming in the Bronze Age, it started really with the fact that it's an easy way to hunt, because they figured out back then that if you cut clearings, then animals would gather in the clearings because it was nicer grazing and what have you, and that just made them easier to hunt because the guys could hide behind the trees. And the deer would come and mooch in the clearings, and they could just pick them off. So that was the beginning of the deforestation. But in actual fact, the reason that much of Dartmoor, Bodmin, in fact, a lot of the moorlands around Britain, the reason that they're so barren is just because we like deforestation everywhere. That's man just making a mess of things. And, we it's funny how, now we see them as really romantic, open moorlands, and the reality is that was just the beginning of deforestation. We're just continuing the mess now.
None really appreciates your answer.
Thank you.
Raymond asks, do you guys know what the latest stone circle or monument is? Oh, that's broadened it out a bit. Date-wise. He says he hasn't had any luck trying to Google it. So we're totally into the area of speculation here, aren't we?
Raymond, I don't think you will, because the trouble is that... And
here we go. Really good question. You've really opened up something else there, Raymond, actually. Go on.
Well, the thing is that, in fact, Michael, you picked up on this a month or so ago, and that was that there are a lot of sites in Britain that, if you read any of the textbooks, and I'm including, people like Aubrey Burrell, who, we all raise our caps. He's an extraordinary man, and his contribution to...
Has anybody else done more work than he did?
It's second to none. He's an extraordinary bloke. But you read any textbook, and many of the sites are dated on their typology. So they look like, we know that this site is Neolithic, and this one looks like that one, so we'll consider that to be Neolithic. The vast majority of, you said stone circles specifically, the vast majority of the 1,000-ish stone circles in Britain have not been excavated and dated. So so the simple answer is, haven't got a clue, mate.
This, really, what really brought this home to us was when we were researching to start filming at the Rollright Stones, which luckily enough for me is only about 20 miles away. It's an easy half-hour drive, 40-minute drive, what have you. And it's always been dated, and I think on the plaques on the site, the date has been fixed in my mind. Rollright Stones, 5,000 years old. And you assume in your mind that at some point some archaeology has been done, and maybe a radiocarbon dating or two has been taken. Ergo, we have a date. Not at all. Some archaeology has been done, but not latterly, or not in a comprehensive way. And as Rupert said, the only dating for the Rollright Stones is one of typography, and it was Burrell who compared it to the Cumbrian circles. Which are dated, to round about that time. Just because they look similar, nothing else.
I must admit that I find it, with massive respect to Aubrey Burrell, I find the connection really curious, because whilst you can see certain correlations, but the reality is that the Cumbrian stone circles are massive in comparison with the Rollright stones. I don't get the same sense from them at all. But hey, who am I? Interesting though. But the other thing is, and this is something that we joked about, although it was a kind of serious joke in Standing with Stones, that we're talking about massive periods of time. We know that there are certain sites that were in use for 1,000 years, getting on 2,000 years, some of them, and so when a site was built, so for example, you have the Pontypridd rocking stone, which is in a stone circle near Pontypridd, surprisingly.
There you go. That's certainly one a recent circle.
And that is a completely modern circle that was just when was it built, Mike? Do you remember?
No, I don't actually, but
it's a modern circle anyway. And it was built as, you can almost call it a folly, but it was built as a reverential thing to our ancestors. Well, how on earth
And
do
there's a
we,
site for the Gorseth for
for the
the
Gorseth?
yeah.
Yes, that's absolutely true. But how do we know, for example, that some of the Bronze Age sites weren't built as follies, as a respectful thing to our Neolithic ancestors? We have no idea. Maybe they found the Neolithic stone circles to be just as romantic, and they thought, do you know what, we'll do one of those. Maybe. We don't know. Maybe.
They're nice, aren't they? Let's have one of those. We're
Yeah.
still doing it. There are a lot of modern stone circles.
Yeah.
Pontypridd rocking stone. There are a lot in Wales, and I can't name one of them. Oh yes, I can. The Danny Rogoff Caves. The Danny
Oh,
Rogoff
yes.
Caves Visitor
Danny,
Centre.
do you know what?
It's got a massive stone circle out the front of it.
Do you know what? It's absolutely ridiculous. I have a very, very, very soft spot for the Danny Rogoff Caves.
Yeah.
Because do you know what? I'll tell you this. Because when my younger son, who is now 36, when my younger son was about 10 years old, he said to me, "Dad, I want to go camping." Well, you see, I never do anything by half. I've always wild camped. If somebody says camping to me, the last thing I think is a campsite.
Yeah.
I'm thinking mountains. And it never occurred to me that my son meant he wanted to go to a campsite. I just, expedition. And so I was taking my 10-year-old son with
and he's
a
back in the
large
room.
rucksack each across the Brecon Beacons, and we had a great time. The thing was that the second night we were in a massive storm. We were right up high in the mountains. Massive storm came in, and basically we had no choice but to retreat down the mountain. I was camping with a tent that at the time had carbon fiber poles. Immediately after that trip, I replaced it with an expedition tent with metal poles. But the wind, the strength of the storm, it snapped the poles. We were lying. I always wish it had been filmed from outside because it would have looked like we were vacuum packed with the tent just to the ground. And in the middle of the night, we were walking down the mountain in the lashing rain because there was no point staying up top. And we ended up at the motel where there is it's flashed up a bit since then, but where they've now put that stone circle. It used to just be a motel, and we ended up in that motel.
You didn't lose any cred at all then, Rupert?
What with my boy?
Yeah.
Do you know what? He has travelled and trekked and everything else more than I ever have. So clearly, it just sparked his passion for it all. Yes. Yeah, whether it lost me cred as a dad, I don't know. You'd have to ask him that.
I just want to bring in a couple of comments that have come in, Rupert. Pavla says, "I'm sorry, Pavla, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce your surname right now. You'll have to tell me how to do it phonetically." But Pavla says, "It brings me back to the time when I bought your DVD." And I was asking myself, who are these guys? Because they were asking the same questions as I was asking myself. There was no talk about rituals and temples, just common sense. Brilliant.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for that. It's not, it's not in that we dismiss the ritual thing. We question the assumption, though.
Yes.
We don't dismiss it. We just question the assumption because it clouds things.
Yes. I think if you want to be really picky about it, then we don't necessarily dismiss ritual. What we do dismiss is temple. And in fact, those of you that have got the book, the last chapter is called Temple, What Temple? Because it's just that assumption that, how often do you find, that they've been excavating, particularly in Wiltshire, that they've been excavating and they've found, and they say, "We found another temple." And you think, how many bloody temples do you think you needed within a single square mile? Why? In fact, that makes me think of when we were filming at the Rollrights just the other month. that there's the mound that's by the King's Stone, that for just even now, there are some people who've said that that was the remains of a long barrow. Except that, well, you know that the Whispering Knights, if everybody is correct, is the remains. It's all that remains of a long barrow. And you think, well, why would they have built a second long barrow 100 yards from the other one? It's just stupid. But there seems to be this tendency to just leap to the easy answer rather than be happy to say that actually we don't have an answer. We'll just have to keep looking. It's this insistence that we must have an answer. Sometimes no answer is the truth.
Talk of ritual has taken me to something that I was alerted to just today. And that's the stuff that they're discovering at the Woodbridgehenge, which is a site that's being excavated in advance of cables being laid underground from the offshore wind farm there. Yes. Off the Sussex coast. Woodbridge just being on the coast there. Which has a little bit blown our minds, really. It's difficult to do. It came up, actually. I don't know if anybody has been watching Digging for Britain with Professor Alice Roberts, isn't it?
Alice Roberts is wonderful.
She is, yeah. And there was a 12-minute, 15-minute piece about it. And they have... What they have is a henge-like structure. They're not calling it a full-blown henge, though it looks like it's going to turn out that way. But in the ditch, they have found, at least running round part of the ditch, a wooden walkway.
Yes.
Which sort of is this wonderful thing. I've always said that if we look at stone circles, we look at stone monuments, and we go, wow, they're so enigmatic. And I'm thinking they wouldn't be so enigmatic if we'd see the wood that was associated with them.
Yeah. And it's just
structures.
The most important thing to factor in, isn't it? It's no, do you know what? I'm just going to spout. But it's like so many things. Do you remember?
Go!
No.
Rupert Soskin, spouting, begin!
No, I promise I'm not. I just, it was something that we talked about. I don't even know. We probably didn't even do it on film. I'm just talking about you and I, Michael, when we were out filming. And it was when you go to the remains of certain long barrows. And the one I'm particularly thinking of is Castellinard on the Isle of Man.
Oh, yeah.
Where it is just the skeleton of a humongous long barrow.
Humongous, yeah.
And you look at this enigmatic arrangement of stones, and it looks the most mystical thing you can possibly imagine. And then you go to somewhere like Stony Littleton or Bella Snap, and you see one that's just not been destroyed by the thousands of years.
Or at least has been restored.
I know it's been restored, yeah. But they could tell when they restored it, they could tell from its state, they were essentially just tidying it up. They know what it actually looked like.
Yeah, or West Kennet.
And yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, West Kennet is a very good example, actually, that when you see something as a cohesive body, if you like, then it doesn't seem mystical at all. It makes complete sense to you. It's just when you see the bones that you think, what on earth was this? So as Michael said, if you imagine every site and now put the timber up, and obviously we don't know how that will have been a lot of the time, but as soon as you allow for wood to have been possibly even the biggest percentage of the actual mass of a site, it changes everything, absolutely everything. And I'll say this again, because I think this is one of Michael's most beautiful ideas was when we were filming at the recumbent stone circles. And and those of you that know the recumbent stone circles up in Aberdeenshire, near Inverness, that you have an altar stone, which there's one in particular. Is it Old Keeg? I think it's Old Keeg. It's a 40-ton.
Oh yeah, it's massive, isn't it? Yeah.
That was pulled from. They know where it came from because they can the fingerprint of geology. They know exactly which.
It wasn't Old Keeg that I did the CGI on though.
No, it wasn't.
It was the one in the woods.
You did the CGI. You did at Cothingham Wood.
Cothingham Wood, yeah.
A very beautiful CGI too, Mr. Bott. But okay, yeah, it's 40-ton block of stone that they dragged out up to the top of the hill from I don't know how many miles away. So clearly, I don't know why. Why? None of us know why. But the thing is that they positioned these altar stones so accurately to align with the landscape. So there's another one, East Aquarius, where it's actually, do you know what? It's not. It's Stonehead. That's what made us laugh about Stonehead.
Stonehead of Daviot.
Yeah, Stonehead of Daviot. The altar stone there isn't flat. It's actually slightly curved. And it matches exactly, when you stand in the middle of the circle, it matches the hill in the background.
Beyond,
so, so they positioned these altar stones meticulously. And there's a couple of them where you can see where there's small stones, packing stones, put underneath just to get the angle exactly right for the landscape. They really worked hard at these things. And then at each end of the altar stone, there's an upright stone. So you've got two standing stones and an altar in between. Now, that's all we see, a stone circle with an altar stone on one side. Well, Michael had the idea, well, yeah, but okay, so imagine that actually that's now a wooden structure, that there's a wooden structure that contains the stone circle and the altar stone. And it's because at the end of the lunar cycle, that 18.6-year lunar cycle, the moon at that latitude, and it only works at that latitude, that the moon rolls across the horizon. So just imagine that this is now a building, and you're sitting inside the building. It's man's first cinema. This is Michael's idea, that you're inside a building, and suddenly the moon appears in your altar window, and it just rolls over.
Glides across, yeah.
How many hours would that be? It just rolls across the altar stone. Probably only take an hour, maybe, for that.
If that,
something
yeah.
like that. And just disappears out the other side of the window. And I just think, you know what?
Neolithic IMAX, I said. Neolithic IMAX.
Exactly. I think it's a sublime idea, and I think that is eminently possible. So the only thing that we're missing at any of these sites is the walls.
Yeah, yeah. It should be remembered that I'm sorry, recovering from a chest infection. The recumbents are at that latitude because it's only at that latitude that the moon actually does skim the horizon at particular times of the year. Yeah.
So
anyway,
to clarify that is if you go south of that point, then the moon is above the horizon, and as soon as you go north of that point, then the moon actually doesn't rise above the horizon. It's only at that narrow band that it literally rolls along the horizon itself. So it's
I just want to acknowledge a few comments again, Rupert. Keep us on track here. Pavlo again says, I somehow see a Bronze Age boy asking his dad, "Daddy, what are these stone circles for?" And the dad, not wanting to admit he doesn't have a clue, saying something along the lines of, they were to stop the rain. And the boy, when he's all grown up, suggesting to the local chieftain during a period of severe rains, let's build a stone circle. That's nice, isn't it?
You see?
Nice
Yeah.
one, Pavla.
Yeah.
Steve, what did Steve say? Hold on a second. Let's get this on screen. Steve, if temples, if not, sorry, if not temples, then why ritual? Ritual suggests making a sacrifice to some magic god. If they had time, if they had time to venerate a god, why wouldn't they build a temple or spiritual assembling place?
No, that's and not being dismissive, but that is only one.
Did I read that right? If they had time to venerate a god, why wouldn't they build a temple or spiritual assembling place? Yeah, quite right. Yeah,
They would, absolutely they would. The thing is that ritual literally just means a repeated practice.
Yeah.
So so it can be anything. It could be celebrating the solstice. It's something
that's
that
the
we
odd
do
thing, isn't
right
it?
here.
We, in our strangely modern world, have a very, if we use the word ritual, we have a very narrow view of what that means.
Yeah,
but if
we
you think about
automatically
it,
make it religious.
if you think about it, the Spurs match is a ritual tonight.
Yes.
I know some people that should be here are not here because they're watching Spurs.
David Potter, we'll talk about you in your absence.
Yes.
No, that's absolutely true. And so, in fact, that's a very good point. Any football match every week, or any sports meeting, any the Women's Institute on a Tuesday evening, whatever it might be, it's a ritual.
Or at least they have their own rituals. They have their rituals.
And so our if you're referring to what we were griping about earlier on, we only gripe about the assumption. We don't we don't dismiss the possibilities. We just gripe about the assumptions. They would have built temples, but I just don't think they'd have built so many of them. How many temples do you need in a relatively, by today's standards, tiny settlements, tiny populations? Even if you take somewhere like the Wiltshire complex of Avebury and Stonehenge and Durrington and all around there, which we know was one of the largest populations in the country, and by today's standards, that entire region would have had a population not even approaching an average town today. And how many temples do you need within that region? So every time, as I said before, every time when they dig up something else in Wiltshire and say, we've found another temple, you say, well, why do you make that assumption? How many temples do you think they needed?
Calibra asked, do you know the age of the moon tracking dolmens? Where are the recumbents dated to? Do we know?
Do you know what? They are, as far as I'm aware, hold on a second, because do you know what? I'm not going to spout to you. I shall reach over to my bookshelf.
Oh, goodbye. Now we can see the rest of Rupert's room. Yes, one day he's going to take us into his cabinet of curiosities. You can see at the back of the room there.
I am. Yeah. I am. I'm going to give you a guided tour of my cabinet of curiosities because I have a host of wonderful things that a lot of you might enjoy. So, pick a stone. Do yourself a meal.
Oh, you're breaking up a bit. Oh, no, you're back-ish.
Right.
Yep.
Cothamere wood. Let's look. I'll look up a couple so that we can.
All right. While you're doing that, Kook Box on YouTube. So I've found a similar thing built into the bank on several henge monuments with raised interiors, as if the centre of the henge was the altar stone and supposed to be viewed from outside in. Yes, I would like to hear more about that, Kook Box. Obviously, that's not your true name. This is an alias. Does this mean that you're an archaeologist, or you've worked in archaeology from time to time, Kook Box? More detail would be nice, because we are fascinated by such stuff, and we like to make our own synthesis of stuff. So any evidence of raised interiors and other things going on in henges, most welcome. So get back to us on that. Have you found a date yet, Rupert?
Nope.
No,
Nope.
you probably
I've got lots
won't.
of information, but no date. Lots of information, but no date. So, okay, let's go past. Let's. I'm trying to remember all the recumbents off the top of my head. Let's have a look at Old Keeg.
Yes. Excuse me.
Old Keeg, 105. Old Keeg. Don't go quiet while I'm reading. That's bad viewing.
Oh no! I think. Do you know what? We're at the hour mark.
No.
Seriously, Rupert.
Where did that go?
Yeah, people kept asking questions. You know how we complain that people don't ask enough questions? Well, thank you for your questions, folks. It's most welcome. Exercises the brain wonderfully, and I hope some of the answers have been useful to you, folks.
Do you know what? Can I just say, I did remember that right. Old Key, 40-ton altar stone.
Well done, but no date.
Hey, no date.
Kook Box, hitherto known as Steve. Steve,
Steve
says he's noticed on both Figsbury Ring and Knowlton Henge they had a small causeway going through a much wider opening in the bank. Yeah,
that's true.
absolutely yes. Right.
We have our theories on henge causeways, and we're not going to go in there now because that will become something big wrong.
Yes, especially as we're past the hour mark.
Especially as we're past the hour mark, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I'm going
I don't, Steve. I don't know if you've watched the Standing with Stones, which we made over 10 years ago now. But if you haven't, you can find it in the section dealing with the south of England, where we sort of expounded our first sort of raw interpretation. It's one of the few times we sort of stepped outside the norm and put forward one of our own
yeah, we did.
theories. But there's a bit about
Knowlton.
What?
Is that what you're saying? Knowlton Henge?
No. About Avebury, and then the other one. Not Knowlton. And my mind's gone a blank, Rupert. I think we should. I think we should go now. I think.
Steve mentioned Knowlton specifically. Yeah, I'm just going to say that because we're talking about the latitudes up there to mark the lunar cycle, and we know that Callanish is Neolithic, and so I'm going to, by extension, say that I think, without looking them all up, I think that they're probably all Neolithic rather than later.
Okay. So that was a good diversion. Mo says that Kook Box is Steve Cooper, and he's a good bloke. We'll take you at your word, Mo.
Thank you, Mo.
Thank you.
Always rely on Mo. Excellent. Excellent. All right. I will. I'll actually check up about the recumbents, and we can post that somewhere.
So we've gone down a sort of windy route, led on by our viewers here. One thing I did want to sort of talk about is what our plans are. What kind of things we want to do next year as the Standing with Stones project. Well, one thing that will be coming next year is a film about the Rollright Stones. That's filmed. It just needs a bit more sort of B-roll, and then I can throw it together in the new year. Obviously, the podcast will continue,
Yes.
and we will continue to ad hoc, as and when we can, produce more films.
Yes. Yes. In fact, it's one of the things that I'm actively looking at the moment is different. So, the thing is, without going off on one, the thing is that obviously for any site that we want to make a film about, there has to be a story that can be told. And when I say a story, I mean, utterly based on fact, but there has to be something that we can actually tell you about it, because otherwise, what's the point? I mean, it's different when Mike's gone off and done some very beautiful just portraits, if you like, of
that was the
of
idea.
some sites where that's really to show you, give you a different view of sites that
they're just made for pleasure. They're just made for enjoyment. Really.
Yeah,
that's it.
but they're still educational. Even in just giving a view of sites from an angle that it gives you a sense of a site. If you can see it, even a drone shot, you think, oh my God, it looks like that from up there. It does give you a different sense of what a site was about. But in terms of making,
do you know what though? I mean, drone shots are all very, but for me, most of the interest is right on the ground.
Yeah,
That's what I it's the kind of, I know it's nowhere, we're not talking about how they occurred when they were built, but the way they occur now, there's a kind of romance about where they're set in the grass, in the earth, in the whether it's sun, rain, moon or shine or what have you. There's a romantic aesthetic about them that I also try to capture as well and share.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. But I'll add to that, and that's one of the things that I find so intoxicating about visiting prehistoric sites, is that you can stand somewhere and know that you're sharing the space where your ancestors stood, and it doesn't make sense to you in the way it made sense to them, but you know that you're sharing that space, and I love that, really.
Shared space, yes, very good. Mo says, "Uli long barrow, Rupert will love it, full of spiders for a start." Where's me mouse gone? Here it is.
I love spiders. In fact, I love all insects, and I consider myself a protector of insects because so many people hate them.
And Skillis, is it Skillis or Skiles? Skillis, must be Skillis. Says, I believe Sun Honey would be one such RSC.
Indeed.
Yes,
Sun Honey in the film.
Sun Honey is in the film somewhere,
I had forgotten about Sun Honey. That is true.
And I was in the RSC once upon a time.
I know.
But that's another story. Also, do you know what I'm going to attempt come the new year, or sometime, is going out myself with the camera and stuff, and making films that are about the story of getting to them as much as the site as well themselves.
Okay, that's nice. That could be fun in Wales.
Yeah. But if there are stories surrounding them, and the journey can be as interesting as the destination.
Yeah.
So, putting that bit of spin on it. Oh, in other news, we've gone past the 3,000 download mark on our podcast.
That's fantastic.
Which is really nice, and the audience seems to be growing on that, which is absolutely splendid, and the feedback has been very, very good, which is very heartening indeed. What else do we want to? Oh yes, we were thinking about altering the way we choose Stonehead of the month for the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. John says, John Emmerich says, Rupert, that's exactly why I like these sites so much, knowing that someone just like me 5,000 years ago was standing at the same location, probably wondering about life in the same way we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't changed.
That about nails it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing that's happened, just, so we're sort of finishing off, some of you may or may not have noticed that I've simplified, excuse me, I'm going to cough, excuse me. Sorry. Simplified the Patreon tiers. They used to be a little bit convoluted and in 5 levels, stretching from $1 a month right up to $100 a month. I've reduced them to 4 simple tiers. There's the stone level, there's the flint level, there's the bronze level, and there's a gold level. Stone level is $1 a month to support us doing the podcast and making films. There is $5 a month. You can do that one. $15 a month, and there's, if you want to splash out, there's $50 a month. That's the goal. So those are the 4. I've changed them just to make them a bit more sort of cool and simple. There we go.
Yeah. The $50 a month level, they get to have dinner with Michael every week. So
that's going to put people off.
Dear.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So so have a look at the Patreon site if you've got a moment, because we've got plans and we want to make more films. But as you've probably noticed, our output is a bit sort of hot one month, cool the next, and there'll be a flurry of activity one moment, and then it'll all seem to go quiet the next, and that's because life tends to keep pulling us away. And the more support we can get from the Patreon aspect, the more time we can focus on doing this and creating more stuff. So your support is welcome, and thank you to our existing Patreon supporters as well. We are most humbled.
We think of you as members of the team.
Yes.
You do.
So I think we're winding up, aren't we? It sounds like it, unless you've got anything else on your mind that you wish to put out. Can we mention the fact that we might be doing a tour next year? I mean, I know the details aren't finalised by any means.
Yes, yeah. I'm sure Rick would be very happy for us to be spouting about it.
Yeah.
We are organising tour. Now, this is, some of you might know, when Standing with Stones came out 10 years ago, we actually we got second place in the Archaeology Channel Film Awards. Cheers, Michael. We got second place in the Archaeology Channel Film Awards in Oregon, in their awards thing in Oregon. And Rick, who runs the Archaeology Channel, contacted us this year and said, would we do a Standing with Stones tour? So it took us quite a bit of time to figure out, what sort of tour would we like to do. And this actually epic adventure, actually, is kicking off in Orkney.
Yeah.
So we'll start the tour in Orkney and then work our way down through Britain, ending up in Stonehenge, actually. How could you not? But going through some of the wonderful places. In fact, talking about the recumbent stone circles, we'll be visiting those on the way down, and just all sorts of wonderful places. And that is going to be next September. So if any of you are interested in more information about that, then just drop us a line, make a comment or whatever. Because I can't give you more information. I could give you the itinerary, but there would be no point at this particular moment in time. But it's going to be a fantastic trip. It really is. It's 2 weeks. It's a full 2 weeks.
Yeah. With us.
Yeah, with us. Yeah. Good luck. No, it will. It'll be great fun.
Steve Gill says, thanks, guys. Very interesting. We'll add a link on my website to you. Already shared us around. Bless you. Thank you, Steve. That's really, really much appreciated. Harold M says, has Rupert brushed his hair? I think he's doing an impression of Sideshow Bob at the moment.
Do you know what? My hair...
Because he looks like a cartoon character, because your bloody broadband is breaking up horrible.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a very dear friend in England, Binky Beaver. She says hello quite frequently. Now, Binky, she's a very dear friend, but we met because she was my hairdresser, and then I moved to France. And nobody does my hair like she does. So if my hair is a mess, I can only apologise. It's because I haven't been binked in a while. I do my best. It always reminds me.
That's a thing now, being binked.
Being binked. Do you know what? Those of you, in fact, Michael, you posted the outtakes again today.
I did.
Thanks. There was, it was a bit of a shock to me because we were at Stanton Drew, and I'm standing.
Stanton Drew, that's the one I was trying to think of. Sorry, carry on.
Okay,
Stanton Drew.
But I think Michael, I was standing by one of the stones, and Michael was at least 50 yards away with the camera, and I thought that he was shooting. Full out, landscape thing of everything in, and that's when I said, "Well, how much am I in then?" And he said, "Just head and shoulders." And I thought, "Really?" And that was the first thing I thought. Was does my hair look all right?
I never thought that would be retained for posterity, did you?
I didn't. No, in fact, I didn't think any of it would be retained for posterity. It's quite remarkable, quite how often I lose it. Hey ho, happy days.
Hey. Anyway, Steve says saw the outtakes again last evening. Brilliant. I don't know, they always cheer people up though. They always do. Takes a while to get going.
It's amazing how being an arse and why do people find such pleasure in other people screwing up?
Yeah. So, anything, hopefully my cough will be better next time. Anything else? Anything else before we call it an evening?
I can only apologise that I haven't festooned the place with Christmas decorations.
Gee.
I should have done.
Oh, my Lord, missed the trick. Hopefully, hopefully they'll still... No, they won't still be up next year, next month, next year, will they? Gosh.
So no, I mean, we will convene again in 2019, will we not?
Yeah, indeed. What will be the next thing? I suppose the next thing will be the next podcast, because it's not going to be that far away. The Beaker People.
No, that's true. That's true, the Beaker People.
Better do some
reading.
Some
homework for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Yeah. Well, thank you for being with us. Thank you for all your questions and comments, and keeping us on track and testing our brains out. Hope what came out wasn't too. Hope what came out was all right and was entertaining and informative. We do our best. But with that, we will say we will love you and leave you. Thank you very much.
Say a very, very happy Christmas to all of you.
Have an
and to those
extremely
of you
jolly
that
time.
don't do the Christmas thing, what did you say?
I said have an extremely jolly time.
Indeed, yes. And for those of you that don't do the Christmas thing, well, happy solstice.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. All right. We could drag it out forever, but we won't. And we will say, we won't sing a song to finish or anything silly like that. Yeah. Well, same to you all. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Skillis. Thank you, Steve. And we'll say night there. All the best to everyone. Happy New Year. Bye-bye.
Take care, folks. Happy Christmas. Bye.